Welcome to the latest of the Compliance Factory's series of conversations about anti-money laundering, financial crime, and remediation projects. My name is Adam Samuel, and I'm here with Malachy McClelland, remediation project specialist. We thought we'd talk about the materials that the money laundering reporting officer and indeed staff generally involved in anti-money laundering activities should be emphasizing, should be looking at, and making sure that we can actually find our way around the various materials. So Malachy, what would the typical starting point for a money laundering reporting officer be when looking for the correct materials to apply to a project?
Well, the MLRO will always rely on the money laundering directives and the JMLSG guidance. But I think a starting point has to be the FCA handbook, and one of the things would be useful would be to have a look at how to navigate through the handbook.
Okay, let's start there by sharing screens. And if we start by looking at a Google screen, Google search, that will probably do the job nicely enough. We need to start by looking at the FCA rulebook. You'll probably see rather sadly that I've got the FCA website staring at me as a favorite. If I click on that, I go straight into the front door. Now you can of course go into the handbook directly without going through the FCA website, but I like to go through the FCA website. It enables me to see what's going on, see if there is any news that I need to catch up with before I come down the screen and click on the FCA handbook. In order then to find what I'm actually looking for, I start there and begin with high-level standards, always do that, and particularly begin with the principles. The FCA, when it fines people, almost invariably bases its discipline on a breach of the principles, so we should know what they have to say. If we now begin our look at the principles, look, it begins with integrity, which is dishonesty or recklessness. The more important provision in a way is due skill, care and diligence, because the regulator can catch firms for acting badly or carelessly without necessarily finding a particular rule breach by just pinning it on principle 2. Our money laundering reporting officer, or MLRO, would always focus on principle 3, or be expected to by the regulator. So you've got the adequate risk management systems, and a great deal of anti-money laundering work is precisely about that. As we go down the page, we can head straight actually for principle 11, which requires firms, when they know they've got a significant problem, to tell the regulator before the regulator finds out. The MLRO doesn't necessarily have to be that person, as long as there is someone within the firm elsewhere whose job it is to talk to the regulator. But it's an extremely important provision, Principle 11, and it can get individual money laundering reporting officers into considerable difficulties if they don't report stuff to the FCA or ensure that somebody else reports it, and later the regulator discovers it for themselves. Let's go back to our high-level standards, because we have another rule book which contains even more important information. CISC. This is an enormous rule book. If I scroll down to the bottom, you'll realize why I'm saying that. There's an awful lot to it. But the first problem concerns what applies to which type of firm. You don't want to write an internal memo on your problems with money laundering and refer to the wrong provisions. You look awfully stupid if that happens. The way it works is that the first 3 items are essentially insurers or their managing agents at Lloyd's, or indeed the Lloyd's market itself. And you'll notice that they have to apply CISC 2 and 3, whereas everybody else gets 4 to 12. Now, as far as we're concerned, the 2 sets of provisions are more or less identical. But nevertheless, we try and stay with the correct set of rules for our particular firm. Sometimes you've got organizations that are a mixture of insurers and non-insurance businesses, and then you have sometimes a bit of a scramble as you add references, but it doesn't actually make a great deal of difference in practice. If we look at CISC here, we see CISC 3 being, for the insurers, the same thing as some of the stuff found in CISC 5 to 7. So the systems and controls, and within that we'll actually find, if you want to, provisions about insurance. But I'm going to concentrate on non-insurers, since they're the majority, and I need to therefore make a passing reference to CISC 5. Not only does it require staff to have skills, knowledge, and expertise, it reminds firms of the need for them to have integrity. It's also a values thing. But CISC 6 deals with compliance, and as you can see, also financial crime. CISC 6 states some general compliance points, but I think we should focus instead on CISC 6.3, because I know that in financial crime, we're going to find anti-money laundering. Just to begin with, I just want to reduce the size of my screen very slightly for a practical reason, which is I want to be able to set up the timeline. This shows you how to discover what the rules used to look like, and what if various things that have been adopted by the board of the FCA actually come into existence. Now, what we can see from this timeline is that the last change to the rules was on the 13th of December 2018, and the board of the FCA has not adopted any other changes. It doesn't mean they're not consulting on changes. Nothing appears on the handbook website until it's been adopted by the board. Let's though get stuck into the actual rules, and we start off by learning about the need for systems and policies and procedures to handle our money laundering risk. You'd expect that. A reference to various bits of legislation which are relevant to us. Notice the Proceeds of Crime Act. It's worth clicking on the money laundering regulations, principally because it will give you the right numbers. So you can see SI, which stands for Statutory Instrument 2017/692, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later. While we're still in CISC 6.3, as we scroll down the page, we encounter a specific provision describing the money laundering reporting officer. Now, everybody except for a sole trader has got to have one, and therefore virtually everybody I know of does have a money laundering reporting officer as the focal point of their activity. What is far more significant, perhaps, is the reference at the bottom of the page in CISC 6.3.11 to the various financial crime guidance. This used to be a single document called FC. You can see it's now called FCG and FCTR. We better go and look at them, because they will complete our FCA handbook understanding of the subject. That doesn't mean it completes our understanding of the subject at all, because as you pointed out, Malachy, there's plenty more to look at. But if we look at the regulatory guides, we will find FCG, we'll start there, and then FCTR, the thematic reviews. FCG is the really important one. You'll see general points in the introduction and the financial crime systems and controls, and specific provisions on money laundering and terrorist financing. This is all technically guidance, but we all know if you break guidance, you break a rule somewhere. Apart from that, we need to be aware of sanctions and asset freezes. Beyond that, the thematic review is a slightly disappointing guidance provisions. You'll see what it is. It's a collection of thematic reviews that the FSA carried out. Only the last few were actually done by the FCA. The smart thing to do is to check in on the ones that relate to your firm. So if you're a private bank, it's a good idea to have a look at 2007. And definitely the two there, the review of private banks, although that's been recently updated, and the automated anti-money laundering transaction monitoring systems you should be considering. But as I say, these are quite old, and it might be better to do this from the bottom up and focus instead, if you're working for a small bank, on the update done in 2014. And if you're in trade finance, the one in 2013. You'll see there isn't really anything beyond 2014. It's a bit disappointing. But if we look at how this actually works, we click on that, and it doesn't help us totally because we now have opened it up. If we want to find the FCA's findings, we have to click through there and then click through a link into a document on the FCA website. It's not a very impressive document, actually. But you then have to check in on the updaters document, click through there, and you've got your document. So you have to take several steps to actually reach the piece of paper that you were looking for in the first place. Anyway, I think we've done the FCA rule book reasonably thoroughly. So where would the money laundering reporting officer really focus his or her attention?
Well, as I mentioned, the money laundering directives and the GMSG guidance.
Okay, so let's go and look for the money laundering directives first. The secret of success here is to look for the fourth one, not the fifth one. The reason is that the fifth money laundering directive merely amends the fourth one. And if you accidentally look for the fifth one, you end up with a lot of rather incoherent material. Also, I like going through the European Union website because I can see what I'm doing. Eurolex, it's called. And you'll notice that it tells us that this act, which is the fourth money laundering directive, has been changed. Now, the fourth money laundering directive, like just about every other European directive, begins with a string of paragraphs headed by the word whereas. They're called the recitals. They are important, you should read them. But they're not officially part of the directive. So if we go back up the screen and look at the current consolidated version, which includes the fifth money laundering directive, we can see that the preambles have gone. And we go straight into the directive. Malachy, what sort of topics could we look up just to demonstrate how one searches around the fourth and fifth money laundering directive as consolidated?
Right, well, beneficial ownership can be a difficult topic, as well as perhaps third parties, useful to look at.
Let's have a look at beneficial ownership. I know it's a bit crude to use Control F, but it does work surprisingly well. Apart from else, it tells us on the right-hand side of the column, you'll see the yellow markings, which tell you where the concentration of activity is on this subject. But it is good to scroll through these things because you will sometimes find something about beneficial ownership that may be of particular interest here. But there is the section on beneficial ownership. We'll see the yellow markings on the right-hand side, rather intense, and that reflects two paragraphs, two articles. Article 30, which deals with companies, and Article 31, which will take us through to talk about trusts and similar equivalent provisions that you find in other legal systems. So there's beneficial ownership. You said third parties, I think. Let's have a look for them. And again, you get the same mix. It's just fewer references, actually, so I can get there a bit more quickly. There is section 4, which talks about performance by third parties. So we've got our searching around the directives sorted out. Where would the money laundering reporting officer want to look next?
Well, I think we looked at the GMSG guidance and the money laundering regs 2017. Okay,
let's mention them, deal with them. Shall I do the regulations first because it's slightly easier? I have a slightly eccentric way of looking for them, which is not to look for them at all, but to look for the financial promotions order, because it's one of the older regulations It's got nothing to do with money laundering as far as I know, but I like to go in there because it takes me safely into the UK government collection of statutory instruments. So I do that. I can then use this. It's 2017, I think, and 692. You can tell I've searched for it before, which isn't a bad idea because it embeds it in the search engine. We look at that and we find, surprise, surprise, what we're looking for. The reason I've done it this way around is that if you search for the regulations directly, you could end up with a version without a table of contents, and that's a pain. When I say without a table of contents, I mean without a click-through set of table of contents, such as I've got here. You can see here that I can select a topic and then click through. So if I'm interested in customer due diligence in general, I might click on part 3 and it will take me safely through to the relevant part of the regulations. You can see all the various provisions set out together. I could have just taken an individual provision and searched for that instead. Say customer due diligence measures, and I just get the one I asked for. You can do it however, whatever makes you feel comfortable. The JMLSG, let's go and search for them. The nice thing about these things is they've been around so long that one can actually find them relatively quickly by, on a standard search. So we look at their web page, we look at the current guidance, and we then have to download it. But we do know from the current guidance, well, from our experience of working with the JMLSG, the first part is, broadly speaking, fairly general. A word of warning or wisdom, particularly in these remote times. Older people like me, you can spot the grey hairs, start to have problems seeing small print. So we go Control+ to make it bigger. I frankly think it's probably good for everyone's health to study things in reasonable sized fonts, particularly if you're working off a screen. The basic way it works is to start very, very generally. Perhaps I should be less jerky there, but you can start off with the risk-based approach, which is central to the JMLSG. Then we start looking at more practical things, but still at a fairly general level, because the other parts of the guidance, the other 2 parts, deal with specific problems. So this will give you an idea of the first part, and it also leaves you with a set of relevant UK legislation, which is quite nice, because it sort of makes sure that we remember what we're looking for. I'll have a quick look at the Proceeds of Crime Act. That's down the bottom. And it's extraordinarily important when you deal with reporting stuff to the National Crime Agency. So let's, again, just be fairly basic. We don't have to be too clever, but I recommend adding UK at the end, because otherwise, and I have nothing against other people's legislation, but you don't really want to pick up the Uganda statute, which I have done in the past. So let's have a look at the Proceeds of Crime Act. You'll be familiar now with this sort of front page, because it's the same sort of page that we found with the statutory instruments. A quick way to speed this up might be to look for a crime that we know is involved, and I'll look for tipping off, which is telling somebody you've reported them to the National Crime Agency and is a criminal offence. So we have a part 7, which is devoted to money laundering, and we can look through it. Again, if we just want to see tipping off in the regulated sector, we click on 333A, and that's all we get. If we wanted to know what it was like not in the regulated sector, we just click on previous provision, and it takes us safely there. You see what's happened? It's been deleted. And this is almost as important, because what we're finding then is the provisions that have deleted it. So we can click on those regulations if we want to. I'm not suggesting we do that right now, but it shows you how you can keep up to date. You mentioned FATF or FATF.
Yes.
What role do they play?
Well,
What is, for our purposes?
yes, so the Financial Action Task Force is an international guidance on money laundering activities, and very well worth a look at.
So we just looked up FATF recommendations, should be recommendations, which is what they are. And we can go straight into the recommendations. And we find we have to download the document. Click on that. And note it's been updated in June 2019. Those of you who've studied this subject for exams will know that there is a table of contents of the recommendations that cover a variety of things. And again, depending on what it is you're focusing on or what you want to see recommendations about, depends on which recommendation you want to look at. So if we want to look at, say, well, we could look at reliance on third parties, which is what we looked at before. We'll see it's floating around in recommendation number 17. But it's a PDF document. We could actually just do the old Control F routine of going reliance on third parties. We'll get the reference in the table of contents. And there it is, the recommendation on that particular subject that we can study. So I think we've pretty much covered everything that the money laundering reporting officer might need to want to look at. We haven't covered all the legislation that might be relevant, but you can't do everything all at once. When it comes down to it, Malachy, what is the crucial document for most money laundering teams? Where is the most important material found?
Well, by the time the teams are working, and they say their annual reviews or their remediation projects or their onboarding of a client, the firm and the MLRO will have signed off on a set of procedures and policies that will rely on the sources that you've just referred to. And the GMSG guidance is very helpful to explain something that maybe is not so clear to an MLRO or to his team.
So in fact, the procedures, while heavily leveraged on the JMLSG, actually contain elements of all the things we've been looking at. What that really suggests, though, is the need for some sort of consolidated source of information, which doesn't really happen, doesn't really exist. I'm sure firms could do it, though, take individual topics and put together all the information, say on beneficial ownership, all the material on politically exposed persons. I think that's going to be the future of this particular subject, because unless we do, and unless we have staff that can navigate these rule books, I'm not sure how compliant we will be with the CISC 5 provision requiring us to have competent staff, or if you're an insurer, CISC 3, because there's an education piece that needs to be done here to help individual members of staff locate the precise bit they need most. I think years ago, everybody just went for the JMLSG. Now the fourth money laundering directive, as amended, is more of a source book on the subject. But I think if you don't cover the basics on the FCA website, you are asking for trouble with the regulator when they come along and test how competent you are. But it's not an entirely straightforward business keeping track of all these various provisions, particularly as they're all getting amended all the time.
Well, I think firms will have to have their own policies and procedures and ensure that it's relevant to their business.
Yeah, and I think policies and procedures have to cover, though, all these materials, otherwise they don't do the job. I think on that note, I think we ought to finish our journey around the various rule books, but except to wish you the very, very best of luck in keeping abreast of all these huge numbers of provisions that confront the average money laundering reporting officer and their teams. But thank you very much, Malachy.
Thank you.